Welcome to the Real Comic Heroes Podcast. Your adventure into the world of comic book movies starts here.
Greetings, citizens, and welcome to another adventure of the Real Comic Heroes Podcast. My name is Travis Bowe from Watchmen Minute.
I'm Steve White. I host Super Mega Crash Brothers Turbo on the Pencil and Paper Podcast Network. And I also have a YouTube channel, Pencil and Paper Productions, where I do a lot of different videos and whatever else is going on. And you can also find the podcast there.
Cool. Welcome.
I'm Santiago from the No Please Don't Podcast Network. I'm on Local Trash, Achievable, Cinemarks, Top Brass, and Retro Wrestling Review. And you can find everything I do on nopleasedon'tpodcast.com.
Right on. Good to have you.
Thank you.
And last but not least...
What a nice change of pace to go last. Usually with the name Adams, I'm always first. So hi, everybody. My name is Sam Adams, and I'm a new podcaster. You can find me on the TV podcast, Recapping Daredevil on the Incomparable Network.
Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you all for joining.
Today
we're going to look at some movie trailers. I think they're all full-blown trailers, not teasers or anything. So we'll talk about what we got here. We got the Joker trailer, I guess the final trailer, a bit of the Star Wars D23 footage that they released, and then Terminator Dark Fate trailers. And then if there's time, we will talk about some Marvel, Sony, Spider-Man D23 news, and who knows what else. But yeah, why don't we jump into talking about Joker first, if that's all right with everybody. So I guess who wants to jump in with their initial thoughts on just a Joker movie in general? Is everyone on board for that?
I'll jump on that first, because I was thinking about this on the way home today, and I think that a Joker movie in theory is great. And the trailer itself looks really interesting, but as kind of I guess you could call me kind of a Marvel fan, I'm not that interested in a standalone comic book movie that doesn't connect to everything else. I think part of what's kind of interesting about these movies is that oh, he's the Joker, and he might run into Batman, or he might run into this hero, or he might run into this bad guy, and kind of taking a step backwards to 1990s, like we're not allowed to reference anybody else, or we would never have these two characters in the same movie. Well, like I said, I think this trailer looks interesting. I think Joaquin Phoenix looks like he's going to do an excellent job at it. The fact that it's like, oh, but he'll never meet up against a Batman makes me kind of just not that excited about this movie.
Okay.
I can understand that. Kind of back on what you're saying there, Sam, I can kind of agree with that wholeheartedly, because I do understand there needs to be that kind of connection to Batman, because you cannot have the Joker without Batman. But there is something about this trailer and what they're presenting that is very unique and interesting. And I guess watching both trailers, not only the first one, but this one as well, the one thing that I feel like they have to do is I cannot feel sorry for the Joker at any point in time throughout that movie. Otherwise, you undercut what the character's all about. Because if you do that, then he's a guy who's not what the Joker's all about. And I can't get behind that. So I'm really hoping that at the end of the movie, I don't have sympathy for this character, because you can't. He's an unsympathetic character. He's just a chaos-driven maniac that you just cannot have sympathy for. You can like him, but no sympathy. And I feel like they're driving that home a lot in the trailers.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about the idea that we don't want to we don't want to have sympathy for the Joker, and we shouldn't. And that's a good point. I like that.
I think it's kind of like, not to put it in the same league already, but it's like Dragon Ball Evolution. Like, it's a movie with those characters based on that story, but not really canon. Like, not telling the exact origin story that you used to know, and that you understand. Like, it's a movie with the Joker in it, but it's not the same Joker,
Yeah. I think my initial thought, you know, when the Joker project was even announced, was just why? You know, why would you do this? Why would you create this unconnected, you know, Elseworlds type story? You know, especially with as much heat as Warner Brothers and DC have been taking over the last, you know, several years now about how their movies have gotten off on a rocky start, I guess. Like, why would you then go and do this, you know, unconnected thing? And it just really baffled me. And then I saw that first teaser, and then I kind of came around and I understood why they wanted to do this. And came from a place of a filmmaker came to Warner Brothers with the desire to do this project, regardless of where it fit within their, you know, cinematic universe or whatever. And I'm kind of coming around to that. And it's weird because I am, I think, like Sam said, I'm also I'm a Marvel person. And so the Marvel Cinematic Universe has been something I've been very invested in as far as being a fan. And it has been hard for me to fathom some company splitting away from that cinematic universe and idea and, you know, and taking a risk like this. But now that I see these two trailers, and I'm just really excited about Joaquin Phoenix as the Joker, and I'm kind of at a place of just saying, well, why not? You know?
Yeah, like I know I can be kind of critical about stuff like that, but I know that at the same time, watching these trailers makes me go, okay, I want to see what they're bringing to the table because it looks really interesting. But at the same time, like I think that it's better if you're going to start doing Elseworld stuff. I think that you should have an established kind of universe, and like you're seeing Marvel doing that with the What If. I think that's great. That's like always something I thought would be kind of fun to do, is little what if stories. And you know, coming from my comic book background, there's nothing I'd like to see more than like an Age of Apocalypse movie or series of movies when the X-Men get involved with the MCU. But at the same time, like I just think that yeah, I think this is just a really interesting project. I think that they maybe made it for the right reason for a change. You know, here's somebody with an interesting story, with an interesting take on the character. But you know, it's kind of a bummer when you see it's got limited potential, because I don't know that Joaquin Phoenix would sign some Marvel-esque 10-movie deal, or
Right.
You know, I don't think that any of these people are necessarily looking at, oh, here's how we're going to set everything up, which might make it a better movie, but I still think it kind of leaves Warner Brothers in the like kind of in the starting gate, still trying to get their kind of cinematic universe off the ground. And the only other thing I'm worried about too is I've always liked the Joker where you didn't know his origin, where he was just some crazy agent of chaos, and where he would lie about things and then you find out, oh, that wasn't true. Or, you know, much like the Dark Knight version, where every time he tells a version of how he got his scars, it's different. I kind of like that. And I'm a little weary of, you know, I always wondered what Wolverine's backstory was too. And then when we found out he was a little Lord Fauntleroy character that ran away from home, it kind of was like, oh, that wasn't as tough guy origin story as I thought. Like, all right. So sometimes be careful what you wish for when you actually give a backstory to these interesting, mysterious characters.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. And I'm going to kind of piggyback off something you guys were talking about, where you're saying you're hardcore MCU fans or even Marvel fans in general. I'm with you. You know, I think I lean more toward Marvel than I do DC properties, but I do have a high affinity for DC properties. You know, the animated series that they do, from Batman the Animated Series through Justice League and so on. I love that stuff. You know, I love the lore that they actually cram into their shows versus what Marvel does with their animated series. They don't seem to give a lot of leeway to what they'll actually integrate into their stories, where DC will go deep and they'll start reaching for characters, the most obscure characters, and you're just like, oh yeah, that guy, I remember that guy. But to be fair, in some respects, DC does actually have a pretty decent, I guess, MCU style universe in their animated movies. The ones they've been doing here recently, they all kind of intertwine and connect. So they've kind of built their own little animated universe, albeit in VOD form, but it's actually pretty good. You know, if they could just apply that to their movies.
Yeah. It just, I think that's those movies just don't get a lot of traction or don't get a lot of notice. Yeah.
Hmm.
I did notice that a little tiny thing. The lady that is, I guess, as we meet him, Arthur, his therapist. Her name on her name tag says Deborah Kane. I don't know if Kane is some sort of reference to Bob Kane or not. So
I would probably lean toward that because she's not a familiar character per se that I know of. Maybe one of you do, but she doesn't ring a bell to me.
Yeah. And on one hand, like if this was the mainstream DC timeline or cinematic universe or whatever, I would think that would be a character with some history. But here being a Todd Phillips film and Scorsese, I don't think they're going to care that much about, name checking every obscure DC character, or, maybe they just said, well, Batman was created by someone named Bob Kane or partially created now that we, but
I actually watched. Have you guys seen that documentary about Bill Finger trying to get his name attached to that? That was just, it made me dislike Bob Kane in such a huge way, because I never really gave him much thought beyond, oh yeah, he's the guy that created Batman. And I'd heard years ago, there was a friend of mine who told me about Bill Finger, and I was like, what, are you kidding? And I just kind of dismissed it, but it was always there in the back of my head. And then this documentary came out and it talked about it, and I was like, wow, he was spot on.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it really made me kind of dislike Bob Kane in a lot of ways because he took advantage of somebody.
Sure. Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm conflicted. I'm sure. I mean, obviously, Bill Finger deserved to get the credit that he deserved.
For sure.
Yeah, but I don't know if I know people say a lot of stuff about Stan Lee, how maybe he took more credit for some of the characters than maybe he deserved, but he was also like Marvel's spokesperson. So
yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, I was just going to say there's some stories of Stan Lee being like, I got an idea for a man who's a spider. And then it's like, okay, that was all he came up with. And then, somebody else went and did all the work and did the colors and everything. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, this looks great. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Hey, he's a salesman.
I would definitely, I would definitely agree that it has to be kind of a co-opted idea because with like you were just saying, Stan Lee may have had the idea for Spider-Man and the entire premise, but you would not have that iconic costume without Steve Ditko. So he is just as much responsible for creating that character as Stan Lee. Same with Bill Finger. Bill Finger created the design for Batman. He's just as much responsible for that character.
Most of the, environment, all the supporting characters and all that stuff. So, so any other? I mean, we didn't delve deep into the Joker, but any other thoughts on the Joker, this trailer specifically, or the movie in general? Is everyone,
I can't watch this without wondering what would have happened. I don't know if you guys know this, but the original actor signed up to play Thomas Wayne was Alec Baldwin.
Oh, sure.
So when I see that, I can't help but go like, oh, I would have loved to see an Alec playing Batman's dad. That would have been so great.
Yeah.
I think this is what
I'm all in for it.
To really
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Santiago.
At this point, they're not going to have a cinematic universe, no matter how hard they try. I think that ship sailed, and they can't really do it. And I think Henry Cavill's out, and now there's a whole another guy playing Batman. So I think the best thing they can do is just focus on making good, interesting movies with the characters they have, and just making one movie at a time and making that work. And then maybe down the line, put it all together again. But for right now, I don't think there's going to be a Justice League 2.
Sure. And it's kind of interesting because it's kind of the way Marvel got their start. They didn't start off with X-Men and Daredevil and Spider-Man all connected. It took a few years to do all their stuff independently, and then someone had the idea. Jon Favreau had the idea to and Kevin Feige, let's build towards something, and maybe that's what we'll get from DC in another 5 to 10 years, and then they'll start doing something like that. And
was all
Well,
Easter eggs
that
at first. Like, it
yeah.
was just
Well, I was gonna. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
right. It was like a Captain America Easter egg here in Iron Man when like you saw the shield, and then in Hulk there was like little things sprinkled here and there, and then as it started building towards the Avengers, there was more and more hints that hey, all this is connected.
Yeah, like I think the thing that Marvel did really well, and even it's not like the Hulk movie's great, and I'm no like great lover of the first Thor movie, but I think what the thing they did is that they sprinkled in, like you said, those little Easter eggs just to kind of hint to a bigger universe. Like, it wasn't like Shield was this Shield wasn't even it really in the Hulk movie. Like I think if they'd have done it now, General Ross probably would have been part of Shield rather than just the general army or something. But I think what they did is they just had little stuff like there's some Stark tech in this Hulk movie, and then Shields in the Thor movie, and then so I think that's the thing that we're like Warner Brothers kind of went wrong, or DC, is they really tried to shoehorn in like, look at this universe, look at this guy's in it and that guy's in it, when really like you could have been fine with just a scene where something happened and you didn't know what it was, and it turned out the Flash had ran by and fixed it, and it was in the background or something like that. Or I don't think we needed the PowerPoint presentation from Lex Luthor about all the different Justice League members. That just seemed like shoehorned in. Where I was actually wondering this when you guys were talking about this earlier. It's like, do you think there's almost like a guy at Marvel, which it must be Kevin Feige, where it's like, all right, we've written the movie, and he goes, okay, I'm going to go through here. Hey, we need to change the name of this secretary. This needs to be the name of this comic book artist, and we need to put this in the background because Captain Marvel is going to show up in 3 movies, and we want her sash hanging on that chair, or just like little stuff where it's like we're going to sprinkle these in, but it doesn't really have anything to do with the main story unless it drives the plot forward.
Right. I think the biggest mistake, and this is going back to the quote unquote success that DC had with Man of Steel. And I really like Man of Steel, actually. But coming off of that and then seeing how, the MCU was just taking off and going in really big directions, and then trying to do a Man of Steel sequel and shoehorning that into a Batman, Wonder Woman, Superman movie, just trying to force Man of Steel to have been the beginning of a franchise where that movie wasn't set up to be the beginning of a franchise. And that, I think, is where they made that first misstep, only because I think DC wanted to, or Warner Brothers really wanted to get a piece of what Marvel was having so much success with.
I feel like someone at DC saw a meme, and you guys might have seen it, is when Marvel had released that they were going to create or produce Guardians of the Galaxy. It said Rocket Raccoon will be in a movie before Wonder Woman, Flash, and whoever else. Marvel, you need to get your stuff together. And they, like you said, they clearly tried to just shove everything into one movie and say, there you go, see, we got a universe too. And it just Marvel did it right. You build to something bigger. You don't just cram it together in 3 movies.
Yeah, and I like Man of Steel as well. And if you think about it, they did the universe building kind of the right way to start. There was like one LexCorp satellite and one Wayne Industries truck, and that's really all they did to try and there was always that theory that those whales that rolled by in the beginning are Aquaman, which they later were like, yeah, it's a good idea. Yeah, we meant that. Wink, wink.
Right.
But yeah, I think when you look at that, it wasn't trying to have Aquaman come by and like ride a surfboard by and be like, "Hey, bro," and
see you in 5 movies.
Hey, let's add these subtle little hints in. Like much like I'm still a big believer in the fact that Iron Man 2 has a thing in the middle of the ocean that I'm always like, oh, that's Namor, no, actually that was the game. I'm thinking of the Wakanda thing in Iron Man 2, but that they're for sure referencing Namor, even though they're like, no, we don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, okay, sure.
They did the same thing for Wakanda. They were like, "Oh no, like we're not focused on that right now." And then a couple years later, Black Panther comes out, and it's the biggest thing they've ever done.
Yeah,
They're good at keeping secrets over there. I got to give them credit, which for as a fan is great. You know, when you see something, when you go to go see Endgame and you see Cap lift Mjolnir for the first time, like sure, as a fan, I was hoping it was going to happen, but I had never heard anything about it happening.
Right.
It blew my mind. Yelled out in the theater. You know, so you know, I appreciate that they really do value their secrecy.
I think by the end of Phase 4, the Fantastic Four is going to be revealed. There's no way Phase 4, being numbered 4, is going to end without, you know, them introducing the Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
The whole thing where they're like, oh no, we haven't even casted them. We're not working on that right now. All that, like, they have it planned. Like I'm pretty sure it's done. They're just not going to tell anybody till they can surprise somebody with it.
Yeah. And the funny thing, I'm not a huge Fantastic Four fan as far as the comics go, but I love the idea of a Fantastic Four movie, you know, and there have been, you know, now a few attempts to get that, you know, done cinematically, and they've gotten some things right, but mostly it's not been great. But I love the idea of an MCU Fantastic Four, and I'm really excited about, you know, them Marvel now controlling those characters. So yeah, I definitely think we'll get some of that here in the next few years. I guess I assume we're out of Joker material.
Yeah, we're talking about Marvel stuff, so I think I think we're out of Joker material.
Well, let's jump over to, let's change gears and we'll go to Star Wars. Episode 9. Where are you guys at with Star Wars excitement?
I think as far as, I mean, I'm in for episode 9. I don't feel like I had the level of excitement that I did maybe like at episode 7.
Okay.
But I'm still in.
Yeah.
I haven't given up
that's
on it.
Pretty much exactly how I feel.
Yeah. So I'm eager to see where they go. Go ahead.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. Like I was like when 7 came out, I thought it was great. I had a great time with it. 8, here's the thing that's funny about 8. Like I have some of the same gripes as other people. Like, yeah, I'd like to see Luke Skywalker do some more cool Jedi stuff before he disappeared, type of thing. But I'm always appreciative of a movie that flips my expectations upside down. So it's kind of, I have a love-hate kind of with that movie where I like it, you know, but there's still stuff to not like. Like I don't need them running around on horses in Canto Bright. Like that felt very prequel-y to me. But I'm still kind of excited about this. I think everyone's got a little hangover from Solo. Like I don't think anybody really loved that. There were some things that were cool about it, but you know, great Lando, great droid, but overall just kind of a meh movie. And I think these movies are really better when they're events like this. And I think this is on the right track. I think it looks great. They haven't shown us too much. I'm kind of at a point where I'm wondering, should I stop watching trailers? Should I just let it go for what we've got right now and enjoy it? And I'm kind of, but that's the thing at the same time, like, am I more excited about The Mandalorian than I am this? Like, maybe, you know, that looked pretty cool too. And it, you know, looks like, you know, it's not going to be the same old stuff either. But I think that it looks good, but I just think it doesn't have the same juice it did when it came back for episode 7.
That's fair. Santiago, how about you?
Like I said earlier, I'm ready for it to end, but not like in the bad way. Like I just kind of want this whole Skywalker thing to just finish because it's been 9 movies.
You're ready for a completed story.
Because it's been 9 movies already.
And
each one's about 3 hours long, and every time it's always the Skywalker's fault. And now this one is Rise of Skywalker. So I'm wondering what a Skywalker did now to screw everything up. But
I'm
go ahead.
I'm in this weird place. Like it's like the first time ever, you know, that my Star Wars excitement is low. You know, like you said, you know, I really liked loved Force Awakens and was, you know, fully on board with the hype, you know, leading up to that movie. And then, you know, when Last Jedi came out, I was just, you know, I like it, but I didn't love it. And it felt weird coming out of a Star Wars movie and not instantly loving it. And I had to come to grips with that. And, you know, obviously this stuff is very low stakes. So to say that I had to come to grips with not liking a Star Wars movie is very pretentious. And I get that, but it felt weird, like not loving a Star Wars movie.
Did you like Rogue?
What's that?
Did you like Rogue One?
What'd you say?
Like Rogue One?
I like Rogue One. Yeah, that was definitely up there with that one. Had such a strong ending, and it dips a little low towards the middle, but it starts off strong and it ends really strong. So yeah, that one I was totally jazzed for. And then
like deadened your palate when you watched Force, or what was the last one called?
Solo
or Last Jedi? Yeah. Do you think like because Rogue One had its ups and downs and then had that really crazy ending, do you think that kind of deadened your senses when you went in to watch 8?
Maybe. Hard to say, because I think I was excited about Last Jedi based on the trailers and everything, but definitely not as excited as I was for Force Awakens. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that J.J. Abrams wasn't, coming back to direct. That really disappointed me. And I mean, I understand like the original Star Wars trilogy, George didn't direct all 3, but for some reason this time around it felt like it should be JJ's like trilogy for some reason. And like I felt like he had a plan with Force Awakens, and then it felt like Rian Johnson just deviated from whatever plan JJ had with it. And so now I'm just not sure, like, would we be getting a Palpatine if Rian Johnson hadn't killed Snoke? Like, I don't know. I mean, I'm glad we're getting Palpatine because I love that character, and I think,
there's something to be said for like not for keeping the same leadership in place for the continuation of a story. I mean, look no further than James Gunn and all the outrage when he was fired off of Guardians for like 6 months and then got hired back. Like that's still one of the craziest stories I think ever. So I would have liked to seen what JJ would have done with 3 movies, because I was kind of surprised when I heard he wasn't coming back. I figured if you signed somebody up like him, it's for 3 movies. And I actually heard somebody, I don't know what podcast to credit this to, I can't say it's my own thought, but they were saying they kind of felt like this actually might have been on the Weekly Planet, where they said they felt like JJ was undoing a few things by having Rey have the lightsaber back and by Kylo Ren putting the mask back together. So maybe there is a little retconning going on there that he's like, and I always thought the reveal that Rey was a nobody from nothing parents. I was always like, well, that doesn't mean her grandparents weren't somebody, or so, it could have been there's always a way to kind of write yourself around that. And so, but I feel the same way. Like I would have liked to see JJ for all 3 because I had such a good time at the first one. I actually, when I saw the first one, I was like, oh, I wonder if that was what it was like seeing Star Wars in the theater the first time, like just on the edge of your seat, having a good time, like, nonstop, kind of constantly rolling. Whereas the second one, it was technically a chase, but it didn't feel like a chase. It felt like everyone was just standing around yelling at each other and doing, it just until the very end. So, it felt like you were kind of waiting to get to the action. Like, will Rey finally get her training? Will they finally get caught? Will Poe get his plan in act? Will they get the code breaker? Like it was just kind of waiting around for stuff to happen. And then they hit light speed into that army and everything just goes to shit. But,
my biggest gripe about The Last Jedi was that the throne room scene where they're just casually sitting there talking, plotting, and then like in the blink of an eye, it's a Quentin Tarantino type fight where they're slashing everyone left and right and fighting just really out of nowhere. And then Snoke got cut in half or got his head cut off. It was just quick.
See, I loved it because sometimes I feel like with lightsabers, it's a little too bloodless and not enough stuff going on in there. They're lightsabering guys in the eyeball and, cutting Snoke in half. Like, I would say that was probably my biggest gripe with Rogue One is that if I'm signing up for a Star Wars movie, I'm not just there for space. I want to see some Force shit. So when the best Force thing you give me for the first 90% of the movie is a blind guy walks through a firefight and doesn't get shot until he presses the button they need to press, I'm like, oh, come on, man. Now I do kind of forgive any of those sins of that movie because that Darth Vader scene at the end is so awesome. And it's like, oh, this is the bad guy that we were being told about how bad he was in all these other movies. Like, we finally saw it in action. It really made me want a Darth Vader movie now that we've seen, oh, look at him and his terror. Like, he could just, like a hot knife through butter, just cut through an army. They can have guns, they can have numbers. It doesn't matter. Like, I want to see that movie where he's out just messing people up.
Yeah. I think that was just like, hey, sorry we killed everybody you cared about and we made you care about for 2 hours. Here's 2 minutes of Darth Vader. Enjoy.
But again, see, I subvert your expectations. You know, like, I was wondering, how are they going to get off the thing? And then when they don't get off, you're like, oh, wow, okay. When they said many people died to get this information, these are the people they were talking about.
Oh, wow. It was real.
Yeah. What was I going to say? Oh, the seeing Carrie Fisher or seeing Leia kind of, it still makes me wonder how they're going to pull that whole thing off. You know, I would have liked to find out that this movie starts like, you know, a few years later and we find out that Leia died peacefully, you know, in her sleep, and, you know, maybe the movie starts with her funeral or something like that. But it's something about the idea that they're using previously unused footage and kind of shaping it into, you know, her being in this movie. It just feels, I don't know, it feels wrong to me in some way.
It's weird how they are so insistent that they weren't going to use CGI, but this is okay. And it's like, I kind of don't mind it. Like, I didn't think it was like, I thought that if you used it just to be like, hey, look, this was supposed to, because that was the rumor, was this was supposed to be her movie.
Yeah.
And like, the first one was Han's, the second one was Luke's, and this was supposed to be hers. So it's like, if they found a way to do it with existing footage, great. I mean, I'm sure that it's probably not what it would have been.
Right.
But I mean, if the family's okay with it and it's in good taste, like, I kind of like reserving judgment. Like, I'll see how it is if it is, because I kind of thought they would do the same thing you said. I thought that it would be good to do a little bit of a time jump and, you know, have the status quo changed a little bit and catch us up, you know, via the crawl. Whereas like the last one was literally like, hey, remember the last movie? All right, everyone got home and now they're packing up and we're leaving. Like, it really, not a lot had happened between movies, which almost kind of made it's like, well, why even have the Star Wars crawl at all if there's nothing to update us on? So you could have had a really tasteful kind of like send off for her to start the movie and then just got on with it. But I kind of trust them. Like, I don't think they're doing it as a gimmick. I think they will do it respectfully, because they didn't just want to get like her daughter in to play her and then CGI her over the top or anything. They're obviously not trying to like, they're not trying to be like, check out our tech, because, you know, obviously Disney has pretty badass, you know, technology when it comes to that. But, you know, people didn't like the general that popped up in Rogue One, the dead guy. So, you know, that didn't go over super well. I thought it was pretty impressive, but
I love that. So.
I don't make CGI in my spare time, so I'm not like the type of person like, you can see his mouth doing something. So to me, I'm like, wow, that looks and sounds just like the guy. But I don't think they wanted to do that. So I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt that they're going to do it in a respectful way. But I wonder, is it just going to be like that scene of her hugging Rey from the first movie, but she's wearing different clothes? Like, is that all we're going to get? Or, you know, I wonder what it's going to be.
Yeah, and you made a good point about, you know, waiting to see what they do, because I don't know that they don't have a satisfying way to wrap up her storyline, but I have to wonder, you know, if it's all based off of footage that they didn't use from Force Awakens. I can't imagine that they shot an exit for that character, you know. So I don't know, but I guess we'll wait and see, and maybe I'll be really happy with it. I don't know.
She's going to give Rey a hug and then turn into a pile of clothes.
Right. I'm super jazzed about the Rey and Kylo of it all. Like, throughout this trilogy, that's been some of my favorite stuff, is just following those two characters. And So seeing where they left off in Last Jedi, which I really liked, I liked their storyline in Last Jedi a lot, and I'm excited about seeing them, fighting again in this one, and I don't know. What do you guys make of the whole dark ray, double lightsaber, all that? Is it a vision? Is it, do you think it's real?
Yeah, my first reaction was that it was a vision, and that's kind of the popular theory on the internet and everything. But the more I was thinking about it, it is called the Rise of Skywalker. I was wondering if there's something that happens that they flip, and that maybe she goes bad, and Kylo Ren's the one that flips good, and maybe even he takes her out and sacrifices himself, and that's what ends the Skywalker line or something along those lines. But I still think that it's probably more of a misdirect and that it's a vision. I was just thinking about that.
That feels a little too Game of Thrones ending for me.
a little twisty.
Yeah.
I saw how that worked out.
Yeah.
I'm a Game of Thrones apologist, but I also I also tell people, like, it was too fast. It should have been there should have been a whole other season at least, or make both those last seasons 10 episodes, and don't rush to go do your Star Wars trilogy.
Yeah, I would definitely agree that it's probably a vision. She's gone dark. But again, like he was saying, it could be one of those situations where she does go dark, and I'd never really thought about that, Ben turning into the savior of the entire series. That would be a nice little flip. But the way they kind of projected her in the trailer to show that, I feel like that's one hell of a reveal in the trailer. And I feel like that would just be giving away too much if that's something that actually happened in the movie. So I'm hoping it's just a vision of her dark side, or at least it tempting her, especially if Palpatine's going to be in the movie. I could see it being more of a vision than anything.
Yeah.
What if they just decide to turn everything on its head and they just end the trilogy with the Sith winning?
That's the final shot of the movie,
right?
Does anybody have any crazy? Does anybody have any crazy predictions?
On you, Mr. Abrams.
I mean, he's capable of doing something like that, like ending everything on a huge cliffhanger and then just boom, that's it.
It's true. Yeah.
He did tell Kevin Smith not to come on the set because the final shot would ruin the movie and blow his mind. And he said, if you see it in the theater, it'll blow your mind. Does anybody have any kind of crazy predictions for this movie? My only one is that with the title, I was wondering if maybe they'll change the name of Jedi to Skywalkers or something like that. Instead of a Jedi, you're a Skywalker. And that's the rise of Skywalker. But I think that might be a little too simplistic. I don't know.
I was kind of thinking about, once the Emperor popped up in that, excellent laugh of his at the end of that first trailer, and then seeing his kind of image in the poster that they revealed right about the time this I don't know, trailer, if you want to call it that, came out. It got me thinking about the notion that, Sheev Palpatine is the true father of Anakin Skywalker, and maybe in some way that makes him a Skywalker. Like we don't know where Shmi Skywalker got that name, but maybe there was maybe Sheev is really a Skywalker, and I don't know. It just got the gears kind of turning, and just wondering if the name Rise of Skywalker is some sort of nod to Palpatine in some way. But
that's always been the big rumor, hasn't it? That Palpatine is Anakin Skywalker's father.
Right. He influenced, his mother's birth, or you know what I mean. He influenced Anakin's birth, going back to the creating life that he and Plagueis were trying to bring about, I guess. So
I guess with that, my question would be, why her? What made her so special? Or maybe it was because she was just a nobody and thought, well, I could just manipulate her, get it in on the side, and just, no one will pay any mind to this kid over here, and I can just snatch him up whenever it's convenient.
Kind of like Rey.
Yeah.
Sure.
Like Rey was the kid of nobody, and now look at her. So Palpatine, maybe this has been Palpatine's plan the whole time. Just find nobodies and bring them up from the ground up, and then he's got the perfect followers.
Yeah, I'll buy that.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's his recruiting process.
Could be, yeah. Maybe it's his plan to, bring on these apprentices that are young and powerful, and maybe he has some sort of method of I don't know, possession, maybe, if that's not too crazy of an idea for Star Wars. Like maybe his goal may have been to, I mean, I think the comics or the novels have delved into like him cloning himself, that sort of thing. So maybe he had some sort of scheme in mind as far as that goes, with first with Anakin and then now with Rey. Maybe, I don't know.
If you think about it, they were both slaves.
Yeah.
On a planet, working for nothing really, and they magically get rescued and they're off on this wild Jedi adventure. It's just another thing that's like connected to it, and kind of makes me wonder, like, if it's meant to be planned that way, or they just kind of have their little blueprint for a hero.
Yeah. Did you guys hear about the Disney pulling this appearance between Ian McDiarmid and Hayden Christensen at some Star Wars panel in Salt Lake Fan X, I guess, some sort of Comic-Con or I guess. And I had the pleasure of seeing Ian McDiarmid and Ray Park, Darth Maul, here in Indianapolis a few years ago, just doing kind of a Star Wars panel. And Ian McDiarmid is such a lovely like storyteller and just very warm person. And I like that it seems like he and Hayden Christensen have kind of formed this friendship over the last year or two, or have been doing other appearances together. And for some reason, it seems like everyone now thinks because Ian McDiarmid is in Rise of Skywalker that maybe Hayden Christensen is also in the movie as some sort of Anakin Skywalker, Darth Vader, Force ghost. And I don't know.
There has been that rumor floating around, though, hasn't it? That he would be in it. So,
which I'd be fine with. I'm not a Hayden Christensen hater. I think his performance in Attack of the Clones, leaves something to be desired, but I really like him in Revenge of the Sith. So.
Yeah. That movie needed a proper director to direct him on how to act.
Yeah.
And he was just kind of going through the motions. Mm-hmm. But yeah, he did kind of pick it up a little bit in episode 3.
Yeah. Yeah.
He could be better though still, but he did all right.
Anything else on Star Wars?
I just got to chime in and say, as far as we were talking about the lack of interest or just kind of like the lack of hype, I guess, around the Rise of Skywalker, I will definitely say Mandalorian did kind of pique my interest beyond Rise of Skywalker. Like, I was looking at it going, yes, that's what I want in my Star Wars. For whatever reason, it just, I guess because it was something different, but felt familiar at the same time. Like, that's the Star Wars I want. To get more of that. So I'm really looking forward to that, hoping it will not let me down, but I'm excited for it.
It's looking pretty solid. I've kind of purposefully been staying away from a lot of the footage and the trailer and all that stuff, because I followed it when they did the panel at Star Wars Celebration and heard them talk a lot about it and got pretty excited. I didn't think I would be doing Disney Plus, but now that it's been revealed that for for $5 more than I'm already paying for Hulu, you can just add it to Hulu, for I think $12.99 or something. So I'm definitely getting it now. So like lucky bonus, I'm gonna get to watch Mandalorian. So, I've still kind of been avoiding watching anything. I want to kind of go into it cold.
I just want to see the Knights of Ren do something. They looked really cool in the first movie, and they have to make up for wasting Brienne of Tarth. So, unless they want to bring her back to the third movie and have her die in a worthless way again, and just have it be a running joke, then I'd be like, okay, that's funny.
She'll come back as a cyborg, a General Grievous type. Well, speaking of cyborgs, let's jump over to Terminator: Dark Fate. Terminator movies are weird. This whole franchise is built on two movies that work so beautifully together, and then like every 5 years someone wants to do a new Terminator sequel, and it's just like it seems like they just do more damage to the timeline. And now like I don't know where we're at with Terminator. I've saw Genesis once, so I don't know. I am. It kind of dilutes for me. It kind of dilutes the magic of those first two movies, and it's weird to say that like you think of Terminator as being a great franchise, but it's like, is it? If and this is my opinion, if two out of the five, yeah, it seems like we have more so-so movies than we have great movies. But so I don't know.
Yeah. The percentage
How do
is
you guys feel
definitely
about
wavering. I mean, I'll say this: I have watched 3 and Salvation more than once, and while I don't hold them in high regard to the first two, I find them serviceable. Like I can watch them. I don't feel like that they're blowing my mind or I'm just in awe of what they are. But I can say, yeah, I mean, they're all right. They kind of work.
Yeah.
Genesis I watched once, and that's probably all I'll ever give it. But
Yeah.
I'm hoping that this will be a step in the right direction. That will at least let me feel as though we've got a proper sequel that holds up to the first two, but also weary because, like you said, the percentages it's wavered. We've got 3 versus 2 really solid entries. So I'm very reserved about it.
I'm cautiously optimistic, but I also feel like I'm a sucker because T2 was my first R-rated movie growing up, and so it holds a special place in my heart. Like I remember convincing my dad to let me rent it from the movies. Like I didn't even see it in the theaters. We rented it, and it was like the best thing ever. And the first one still holds up. And I think part of the problem with this series is that a lot of the principal parties that made it successful didn't come back. I mean, Linda Hamilton's one of the reasons T2 is so amazing, and she never came back. So literally, you just have the robot guy that I'll be back. Kind of talks like a robot. Obviously, is the guy that comes back. There's not a lot of like stakes there, like not a lot of emotion. You've seen him die before, and he comes back. So it's kind of like, I actually didn't, I like the premise of the third one, like where they send somebody back to just make sure he's alive and that they never had any intention of actually stopping it. They just need him to end it later on. Like that was a good twist, but I kind of like the movie itself isn't that great. And the one where Christian Bale flipped out on the, sandwich guy, that one was, I don't even think I've seen that one all the way through.
Okay.
And then I kind of enjoyed, Genesis to a point, but it's kind of, it's tough recasting these like iconic characters. Cause I'm just like, Khaleesi does not look like, 80s, Hamilton or anything. So it's just kind of same with Solo. Like sometimes when you recast these iconic people, I have a hard time remember parts of Solo. I'm like, oh yeah, this is supposed to be Han Solo, huh? Weird. Like it's kind of, it takes me out of it a little bit. So now that she's back and it's kind of like, obviously the timeline's been altered and this is supposed to be the third one of those first two. I'm kind of like, all right, I'm all in. The Terminator looks pretty badass. The new one, it's kind of a mix up of the first two. And I'm like, okay, this is better than that T3. I'm liquid, but I also can make a gun out of my hand. Bad guy. Like, I'm kind of in on this. So, and, Tim Miller did such a good job with Deadpool. This is his first movie since then. So I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm ready for it, but I'm also like, it's like somebody that's been hurt too many times. I'm like, I know I'm not expecting it to be good, but I'm really hoping it is.
Sure. Yeah. Going back to like Salvation, like I actually really liked Salvation, and I think I was just thinking about like what that movie tried to do, and I think it doesn't get enough credit for being, I guess, the first Terminator sequel to not make it all about Arnold's Terminator character. It's a movie about human characters and Sam Worthington's like his character who he discovers that he actually is a Terminator. I actually really liked that one. I think it it was gutsy to not make it all about Arnold because they couldn't really use him, and obviously they use him towards the end of the movie, but that's setting up like sending him to the past, in 1984. So I really like what they did with that. But I get why people don't love it, but
and the fact they even went into the actual war and showcased that side of things versus just in flashbacks, that was kind of nice change of pace.
Yeah,
so that was one thing I did kind of dig about that as well.
Yeah, it's interesting, like watching this Dark Fate trailer, and it's kind of like it's something they've been doing in the last few years with different franchises, different movies. Like they're going back to the greatest hits. They're pulling Linda Hamilton back out of retirement. You got Halloween that goes back to like the original Laurie Strode and treating that Jamie Lee Curtis character like the rest of those Halloween movies didn't exist, and it's just a sequel to the original. And it's just kind of this I don't know, theme or whatever you want to call it, of, like I said, just the greatest hits and just giving people what they want. You liked it the first time around, we're gonna just tweak it a little bit and play what you already like. So I'm not against that. So I don't know. I like one of you said, the idea for this new villain Terminator is really cool, where it's kind of a mix of the liquid metal and a regular Terminator. So I dig that. And
feel about the new Terminator not really being a Terminator, just a human with enhancements.
Oh yeah, I feel like that's a pretty pretty cool way to go. I don't remember Genesis enough to know if they laid the groundwork for that, because didn't they try to do something where John Connor became a Terminator or something?
Yeah, that was Genesis, I think, but he got taken over by Skynet or something.
Yeah,
and I think
Salvation, which they've spoiled in the trailers.
Yeah, Salvation did the thing where that guy thought he was a human, and it turned out he was a human at one point, but then he was full Terminator. Like, I think that they're kind of skipping a step. Like, they should have sent the cyborg back first, and then once the cyborg fails, okay, send the full-blown android.
I'm really curious about the line in this trailer where Sarah Connor meets the Terminator again, the classic Arnold T-1000 or T-800. And I don't remember again where Genesis left off. Is that this Terminator, the one that's like Cabin in the Woods Terminator, Arnold?
That's what I'm kind of curious about too, because I wasn't sure when they first showed him in the very first trailer if he was even supposed to be a Terminator, but it's evidently clear he is, but she's still got a lot of baggage connected to him. So is he that one, or is it something different? Because that does change the dynamic of this movie, because it would still mean that it takes place within the original timeline, hypothetically, even when they changed it.
Sorry. Either way, my gripe with it is, why is she trying to kill him, or why is she trying to kill him?
That was my question too. Yeah.
In both timelines, they didn't end off like on bad terms. It was, in 2, he died saving them. And in Genesis, as far as I remember, I think he jumped in time or something, or they jumped in time. I couldn't remember.
Yeah, I like I said, I've seen Genesis once, and I just don't remember enough of that movie. So
that would be absolutely wild if they were just like, surprise, it's actually Terminator 6. They're all connected.
Yeah. It was funny because watching this trailer for the first time, I had a prediction that when we see Arnold here in this cabin in the woods, like, I figure they're coming to his place so that they can, rest and get medical attention and maybe get supplies and just kind of rest up while they're on the run. And then it's probably going to end with whoever's chasing them, the Terminator, whichever new version this is, catches up to them at the cabin, and then there's an action sequence. And then I figured that Arnold would sacrifice himself and die protecting them. And then so we would only see him for 10 minutes of the movie, enough of a to show that there's animosity between him and Sarah, and then do some sort of like training montage with this young girl that they're all trying to protect. And then, like I said, I figured he would be kind of a sacrifice, but then he pops up again towards the end of the trailer when they're apparently fighting on some big like C-130, huge planes. So, maybe he doesn't die like I figured he would in this little cabin sequence that I would assume comes towards the middle of the movie, but who knows?
Yeah, it's definitely interesting to see which way it's going to go, because I feel like of all the characters, he's the biggest mystery right now. And give him another month or so, and they'll probably spoil that in the trailer. So,
yeah. I'm just kind of medium on this. Like I'm not gonna rush out to see this in theater. Like I've seen enough Terminator movies, and they're not. I don't know. I can't imagine they'll ever top Terminator 2 or the first one. So
right.
I'll see this one eventually, though. I'm not rushing out.
Been getting better in quality, though. Do you think
What's that?
Do you think every time a Terminator movie comes out, like it increases in quality, or it's just kind of like more and more every time?
I think it's case by case, because like I guess if I had to rank Terminator movies, I would go T2, The Terminator, Salvation, and then Terminator 3, and then Genesis. So I don't think they necessarily get better, since like 3 forward. I don't know that they've gotten better.
James Cameron's going to have that much of an impact, though, like returning. Because the last really good one was T2, and that was his.
Yeah.
And now he's not back at the helm, but he's got his hands in the mix.
Yeah, but then there was that big statement that he released right when Genesis was coming out. He was, gave the film his blessing and said that, they knew what they were doing or something like that. So I don't know if that's the same thing here, or if he truly has had and maybe he has been a full-on producer in this. I'm not sure, but if that's the case, yeah, great.
I feel like he's done that for a few movies. Like I think there's one other one that he's come out and praised that I saw that it was like, all right.
Alita Battle Angel.
There you go. Yeah.
The one that he had his eyes on for like 10, 15 years or something and never did it, and let Robert Rodriguez do it under his umbrella. And then he was like, hey, love the anime, love the manga, go check it out. It's great. And then you go watch it, and it's like, it's fine.
Yeah, I never saw it.
It's building up for like sequels that I don't think it's ever going to get.
Can't build up the sequels first. You got to make the movie.
But you got to start making a cinematic universe right now. Marvel's like 15 years ahead of everybody.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on Dark Fate?
No, I think I've got one.
I think it'll be fine. Like, it's not going to be like the greatest movie in the world, but like my hope is like this kind of ties it all up for the Terminator saga, and it kind of like gives it the end it's promised us like 4 times already.
Yeah, I guess like with all this stuff, we'll just wait and see, I suppose.
Or we could just keep going on the internet and voice our opinions and until our opinions turn out to not be right, and then we get mad because they didn't do what we wanted them to do.
Right. All right. Let's close out with a little just general thoughts and feelings and discussion about the Marvel Sony split and where that leaves Spider-Man.
Yeah.
If everyone has thoughts right off the bat, jump in, or we can I kind of went through it today, and I actually made like a pros and cons list of this split, and I feel a lot better.
You're definitely gonna have to share that, because I guess when the news hit, I was irate.
Yeah.
Because I want to see Spidey right where he's at. I'm a huge Spider-Man fan. Seeing him home playing with his other friends where he belongs, that meant the world to me, seeing that. And knowing that that's going to be taken away just hit me on such an emotional level. And I actually had to think on it for a while because I got in front of a camera for another show that I do. I started just unleashing just such anger into it. And then as I was actually editing it, I refused to release it because I was like, I don't like that person. I don't like that guy who's ranting right now because I sound like all these hateful people on the internet, and I don't want to be that guy. So I actually had to take a step back and I said, does this really bother me? Does it affect me in any way? No.
Right.
But I would really like for him to stay there. I'd like for him to come back because Sony did say for now. So that kind of gave me a little sprinkle of hope. But
he still got two movies.
Sure. So I'm trying to be hopeful that it'll happen again at some point. I felt like we were building to something great, and then that thing is going to be taken away, and it's not going to be fulfilled as it was promised or as we thought it would be. But at the end of the day, I mean, if that's the way it's going to be, fine. I just have really hoped for it, but that's the way of the world. Money talks, and it just wasn't talking in this direction.
Yeah, I was kind of felt the same way when the news first broke. I was, kind of heartbroken because Spider-Man is also my favorite character, just favorite Marvel character, favorite comic book character. Spider-Man is my number one, and like I will always cherish seeing that Civil War trailer and seeing Spider-Man pop up, with Captain America's shield and just saying, "Hey, everybody!" Like that was a huge moment for me, just in terms of being a comic book fan and such a fan of this franchise. And it's just right off the bat, it was like these guys know what they're doing. Clearly they know what they're doing with Spider-Man. And all that being said, then we get Homecoming and Far From Home, and I really, really love those movies, especially Homecoming. And like I said, really heartbroken that Spider-Man would be leaving the MCU, but it doesn't necessarily change too much for the Tom Holland, John Watt Spider-Man films. Like they're still going to make Spider-Man movies, and they will just not feature the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And having thought about it more today, and like I said, kind of going through this and making a pros and cons list, like, and spoilers if you haven't seen Far From Home, hopefully everyone here has and knows that, the end of that movie, it's kind of Spider-Man is cut off from everybody and kind of targeted. He's been outed and he's been framed by Mysterio for attacking London, I think, and it kind of almost makes sense to cut him off from the MCU for a movie going forward, because he should be kind of on his own. And that's one thing that I think is a pro in the split, that we will finally get a Spider-Man movie where he's not fully supported by Shield and Nick Fury and Tony Stark, and he doesn't have those resources to pull from. And we're going to finally get to see the Spider-Man that I know and love, from the comics, where he has to rely on himself and he has to get himself out of jams. I do think that it's going to be tricky because they've set him up, based on the MCU Spider-Man movies. Like they've set him up on a, being outed and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, that stuff isn't really MCU dependent. That's Mysterio dependent for sure, and Daily Bugle dependent. And that stuff is going to carry over into the Sony, universe. So, yeah.
I get your positivity to a point, but I would feel a lot better about this if I liked Venom more. I really thought Venom was kind of a crappy movie. The even just like stuff like how lazily they put in the Life Foundation building into like the, I'm from the San Francisco Bay Area.
Okay.
The the building looked ridiculous on those hills and stuff. It looked so fake to me, and just little stuff like having Woody Harrelson look kind of ridiculous in the end.
Yeah.
You almost like don't. What's the main actor? You kind of almost seems like he doesn't know what kind of movie he's supposed to be in, and they made Venom look great, and I love that he's chomping heads off, and kind of interesting. They tried to make him a journalist, but he's the shady journalist.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of all over the place, and I kind of wonder. Okay, so how does Tom? If it was a little better movie, and I like that Andy Serkis is going to be directing the next one.
Yeah.
Hopefully that kind of tightens things up a little bit. But I also wonder, like, so what is the next one? Is it going to be him versus Carnage, and then they do a Spider-Man and Venom movie, or is Spider-Man going to pop up in that, or are they just going to do a solo Spider-Man, but yet he doesn't have Edith anymore? And how do you explain that without referencing the Marvel universe? Like, so that's the kind of things that kind of bothers me about it. And it's just that they ran that character into the ground. I mean, I don't remember. I haven't looked it up, but I don't remember the Amazing Spider-Man 2 making like a ton of money. I think maybe it might have even been a loss for him at the time. And, it was kind of like nobody knew what to do with it. And so they were trying to make villain movies and stuff like this. And it's, they had Silver Sable in development. And it's like, nobody's clamoring for a Silver Sable movie. Yeah. I know they're doing Morbius. I think they're actually filming it right now. And it's just kind of like, okay, a vampire movie that can't reference any of the Marvel universe. So why exactly do we care? Like, okay, he might run past Spider-Man in a couple of movies from now. Whatever. So, I loved Into the Spider-Verse. So if you tell me they're making those kind of Spider-Man movies, I'm in. And I could see a thing where they have Peter's in San Francisco because he's on the run. And he wants to go someplace where nobody knows him. And so he wants to get away from it all. And he somehow runs across Venom. And then I think there's a way to do it where it makes sense. But I also just kind of wonder, can Sony pull it off? And wouldn't they rather have 75% of $1 billion than 100% of 100 million? Like that's where I wonder where it feels like short-sighted. But I also kind of believe him when they say, hey, look at his hands or Feige's hands are full with the X-Men and Fantastic Four, because Marvel really, that's one of the things I think people aren't realizing in this whole equation. It's like, yeah, Marvel got 5% of these movies, but they also totally rearranged their movie schedule just to fit him in. I think the Black Widow movie probably got pushed back past Endgame because of this. I think Inhumans got taken off the schedule and turned into a terrible TV show because of this. So I feel like it's like Marvel did kind of like, not like it was for charity or anything. And obviously they was boosting their own movies to have Spider-Man show up in a Captain America movie. But I feel like that it's so ingrained with each other. Like, why not even just find a short-term thing? Say like, hey, look, we want an exit plan, but I also think that we should wrap these stories up. And then when Peter goes off to college, then we'll take it from there, type of thing or something. It just, and I'd love to see some kind of partnership where they say, hey, but you know what, you guys can still use J. Jonah Jameson and some of your stuff and have it be a little loosely connected, but just not have it be that they're sharing secrets with each other either. But I think that's, I think that with X-Men and Fantastic Four, they do have their hands full, and hopefully they get Tom Watts signed up and they're able to kind of complete the trilogy and put it in a good spot. But I have a feeling that they're going to just end up running it into the ground. And who knows, maybe Tom Holland reads the script and goes, I don't want to do this. And they have to restart anyways. But that's me being negative because I just want him in the MCU. I once people join it, there's no leaving it.
Yeah.
I think it'll all blow over, and in the end, everything I've read and everything that's come up, it's Disney's fault that this is falling through, because they saw how successful the 2 Spider-Man movies were, and the original deal is that Sony pays for the entire movie, and then Marvel advertises and swings and does all the stuff for them, but Sony pretty much fronts everything, and Marvel gets like set amount of the kickback, but now Marvel wants 50-50, but Sony's still going to pay for the entire movie to get made, and that's where the problem came in. They still got 2 Spider-Man movies, so hopefully the next one's really good and they decide to get their heads out of their butts and they get it together, or the fourth one is pretty much writing Spider-Man out of the MCU, or he has to go back to his home planet to help his people for a little while. But
the one thing I've seen, and I've heard other things, I heard that they offered to finance them 50-50 too. So I mean, I've heard 25%, I've heard 50%. I don't think anybody knows the true numbers. Obviously, there's probably negotiating points that both sides have leaked out to the press to make them seem less greedy. But at the end of the day, this seems like something where it's like, hey, talk about a symbiote. This is a symbiotic relationship here. Like, we sell more toys doing this. We sell more comics doing this. Let's get everybody together and like I said, even if it's a short-term thing where if like Feige came in and said, okay, here's how we're going to do this. We're going to have his senior year in high school, and then we're going to spin it off where he goes off to college in San Francisco or something. Sure. And you guys can do your own stuff. He can run into the vampires. He can run into, something, there's a way they could do it, and then they reach some kind of agreement like they've done in the past where they've swapped characters with studios where they said, hey, we'll give you the rights to Silver Surfer if you give us the rights to whatever. I can't remember the swaps that they've done in the past, but I feel like that's something where if you just kind of kept it loose, where it's like, all right, Spider-Man's off doing his own thing. He never really was an Avenger. He did it for a minute. He got his Avengers card in his back pocket if he ever visits New York. Yeah. But now he's off doing his own thing, and I'm fine with that, especially if it meant that we could get a Norman Osborn Dark Avengers movie. Like, that's the kind of stuff where I'm bummed about. Is like the big bads that could have been good Marvel big bads are now, granted, Dr. Doom can take that spot, no problem. But I felt like they were setting it up. Like, I was kind of bummed we didn't see who bought Avengers Tower in that movie. Like, that's one of those things where I'm like, I've been dying to know since the first Spider-Man movie. You guys have been teasing us about this. Who's taking that building?
I think that's going to be the Baxter Building.
That was my first thought too. But I thought it was strange they kept cheesing it in Spider-Man. Like maybe that was the tease the whole time. But
right. Yeah. Kind of going back to, I think, Sam, you were talking about the Venom not really being what you wanted it to be, and that was kind of one of my in my cons list was that the Sony overall Spider-Verse, not the individual movie Spider-Verse, but this whole franchise over at Sony, the way that they've gone about this with doing a Venom movie that isn't connected to Spider-Man, and now you're gonna start doing more Spider-Man movies and possibly crossing those characters over, and it's like it doesn't really make sense the way you've done it. That symbiote character needs to have a hatred for Spider-Man that I don't think you can do now that you've established that this symbiote has like formed a bond with Eddie, because that bond needs to have come from being attached to Spider-Man previously, and so I think that is definitely in my cons of this whole thing, is because I think if that's the ground that you want to kind of build part of this standalone Sony Spider-Man universe, you're already changing details of the character that what are they going to do? They're going to introduce the two characters and they're just going to hate each other. I mean, I guess, but there's no reason, for that. Like, you need to have that symbiote relationship with Peter Parker that then gets transferred to Eddie. Like, I don't think you can do it in a reverse and have it feel as important, I guess.
You just wrote the movie for me in my head. I just figured it out. I cracked the code. So college student Peter Parker starts his first day of his summer internship at the Daily Bugle blog, where new reporter Eddie Brock has been brought on, and he hates him and treats him like garbage because he's an intern. But for some reason, the symbiote and him have a breakup, and he goes to Peter, and Peter doesn't want to kill anybody or chomp anyone's heads off, so he splits off, and then they join back up for that mutual hatred.
Right. That's the only way you could do it, is to have.
Yeah, because I think you're right. I think you need to have Spider-Man have the black suit even if it's just for a half an hour in a movie, where you have them. They have that bond. They split up for some reason. and then it goes back to Eddie. But it does, if nothing else, it gets that white symbol on the Venom costume. But that's really, I feel like even just saying it out loud, it made more sense in my head, and is stretching it a little bit for a movie. But even though I would love to see, intern Peter Parker getting, InfoWars J. Jonah Jameson his coffee.
Yeah.
I think the best way to like split everything up, if they don't work it out and they work out like a side deal for another character, is Sony takes Spider-Man, Peter Parker, and Marvel gets Miles Morales in return. So they have a fresh new Spider-Man that they can work, that doesn't really have anything, by the book that you have to stick to, no Uncle Ben to kill, like just something fresh that they can work with. And then that's their Spider-Man, and they can roll with that. And then Sony can do whatever they want with, Peter Parker.
Do you really think they would have went the opposite direction? Because Miles right now is their cash cow. Into the Spider-Verse was their big hit. You'd think that'd be the direction they'd want to go versus Peter Parker.
I think that's just animated, though, at this point. Like, they're not going to...
Yeah, true.
I don't think Sony's going to damage that by making their own Miles Morales live action and then dropping the ball. And then
I still want like a trilogy after, I think this next Tom Holland Spider-Man movie needs to wrap up his high school career. And then I want like a college trilogy where he meets...
I thought that's where they were going. Yeah.
It might be.
I thought it made sense. I actually thought that Spider-Man could end up being like a 9-movie kind of thing where you go
for sure.
3 in high school, 3 in college, and then maybe one that introduces Miles and then he dies, or one that's like him as like an older person and then he's kind of gives it up and Miles takes over. Because I really thought they were playing the long game with Donald Glover in Homecoming. Like that's the kind of thing where like Sony takes it over and they'll just recast it. They're like, he wanted too much money, and it's like, no, you get Donald Glover to put on the Prowler costume, and you have him die. So you have Miles Morales in it. That's how this works. I don't care how many Grammys he's won since then. It just costs more, and you do it right.
It's called groundwork. Yeah. Now that would have been great because you do a college trilogy where he meets Gwen Stacy and Harry Osborn, and then you do you bring back the Green Goblin, and you do the Green Goblin, Gwen Stacy, Harry Osborn storyline over the course of 3 movies. And then, you do his another trilogy of him post college where he's struggling between, being a TA and doing freelance for the Bugle and trying to make ends meet, and then maybe you then do the symbiote storyline and bring in Hobgoblin and bring back Harry and, do some of that stuff and just, but I mean, who knows? And they may still do something like that with, over at Sony. It just, and I'm okay for the most part that he's not going to be playing with Avengers characters, because, you don't need that for a successful Spider-Man, franchise. It's been fun having him pop up in Endgame and Infinity War and Civil War and all that stuff and the Tony Stark of it all. But I am ready for a Spider-Man that just gets to play with his own characters, I guess. So overall, like the last couple days, I've been able to think about it, and I feel better about it. I'm just worried that it's all in Sony's hands now. So.
Yeah, that's just the major con. Is
yeah.
And it really, I wouldn't be so negative about it if it wasn't for those Sony leaks from a couple years ago.
Sure,
because that just made me go, oh man, this is like a technology company that doesn't know how to make movies. They're just throwing stuff against the wall and hoping it sticks. And that's why I was so happy he came home. I couldn't have foreseen this. Like I thought the rumor was that if it didn't make $1 billion, that it was going to revert back. So when it made $1 billion, I kind of had that worry out of my head. And then that news dropped, and I was just like, save Spider-Man from Sony, boom. It's like, I know Marvel has some faults in this, but it's just like, hey, they moved their movies back for you. They gave you Feige. Like that's intellectual property right there.
Yeah. I was reading this piece from Variety. It was talking about the Sony, Marvel, Sony Disney split and all that stuff, and it's I guess Sony Pictures chairman and CEO Tony Vinciquerra, and he says that the studio is in production on a second Venom film, a picture based on the character Morbius, and 5 or 6 TV series set in the Spider-Man world. Says the Sony boss bullishly expressed his belief that the character will do, quotes, just fine, end quotes, outside of the MCU, pointing to the success of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse and the Sony Amazon series The Boys as evidence that Sony is fully capable of hitting the mark on the superhero front. And then it quotes Tony Vinciquerra and says, Spider-Man was fine before the event movies, did better with the event movies, and now that we have our own universe, he will pay off the other characters as well. And he wraps it up by saying, I think we're pretty capable of doing what we have to do here. And that does not fill me with, confidence that Sony is going to know what to do with this character. Just
not at all.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Although, it does speak to one thing that I've been wondering is that like the last couple TV shows that I binged really hard were Umbrella Academy and The Boys. I don't know if you guys have seen those yet. I think The Boys is probably a little bit better because it's raunchier, so and more bloodlusty. But I think they're both great shows, and it made me start to think with all these D23 announcements with Marvel. They really announced way more TV shows than they did movies. I wonder if that's the future of superhero and comic book stuff. Is that we always say that it's a great source for stories because it's got 20, 30, 40, 60 years of stories, depending on which comic book you're picking up. And so do you think they're transitioning to TV shows versus movies? Because there's part of me that thinks that Disney looks at it and goes, well, we can make 3 Marvel movies a year and we're going to get, $15 a person 3 times a year. Or we can make all these shows on Disney Plus and we can get their $8.99, $6.99. I know they're starting off cheap at like $6.99. Yeah. We can get their $6.99 12 months a year. Like, I wonder if they're looking at that and seeing the economics of, it's especially with their massive library and the buying of Fox and the fact they own most of Hulu and all that, that they just look at it and go, we can make just as much money off of these TV shows. And then we can actually probably pay people a little bit less because it's a TV show on Disney Plus and it's not a tentpole movie in July. So I wonder if that's kind of where things are headed, which I wouldn't mind because I grew up reading the X-Men and I feel like they have so many characters and so many storylines and things that I love that it's like that could be a TV show easily with 10 to 20. It could be 15 episodes a season. I mean, look what they did with Legion. They got 3 seasons out of one of the most weird, who cares about X-Men characters of all time. It's a great show.
Marvel could also do the series and then use the same characters from the series to have a big payoff movie.
Yeah. That's what really excites me about Falcon and Winter Soldier. We don't obviously we have this passing of the torch at the end of Endgame, and then we're gonna get this I guess limited series maybe of Falcon and Bucky and kind of the whatever comes next for those 2 characters and Baron Zemo and all that, and then by the time they're ready to have some more Avengers or Captain America type movies in whatever phase we're in now. Phase 4 is the next one, I think, and that series will have influenced what comes next for those characters. And I like the idea that they can do these series that will carry over to the movies, so we don't have to have had 3 movies of setup, like you said, once every 2 years. We'll have saved 6 years that it would take to get through 2 Captain America movies where, they're going to give us a series and possibly a follow-up series. And then we'll jump into the next Captain America movie, already knowing what has happened over the past couple years. So
actually, I think ideas on Disney Plus, doing shows there, actually gives them a little bit of creative freedom to do some of the more outlandish ideas, kind of like
Yeah.
WandaVision, that they couldn't do, really sell at a theater. You know, on TV, you could be like, well, here's a series featuring Wanda, Maximoff, and Vision in this kind of weird little world. And people will just be like, okay, I know those characters. I'll watch that. I'm not having to go out to the theater and see it.
Yeah.
I have it on this app. I'll check it out. So I'm really hoping that Marvel will take a few more chances there and really try to explore lesser, I guess, harder sells for theaters, but
Oh, for sure. I
storylines that
think they've
comic fans dig, you know?
yeah. I think just with this week's announcement or last week's announcement of She-Hulk, Ms. Marvel,
Yeah.
and Moon Knight, I mean that's exactly the type of format that you do those characters in. I mean, I think
Mhm.
She-Hulk could work in an ensemble movie like an Avengers. I mean, certainly she could stand alone on her own movie, but I think you introduce her in as a team up or certainly I think that this platform I think is perfect. You know, give her
Mhm.
a She-Hulk 6 episode series and treat it like a fun, not crime drama, but procedural court drama.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be. I've been waiting for She-Hulk as a character because I thought the one misstep of Daredevil was that it fell into that Netflix binge kind of problem that it was like sell you on the next thing, and I thought it could have used a little more procedural, like why he wasn't like getting Luke Cage out of a traffic ticket or settling a thing for Danny Rand like by that third season. That was such a missed opportunity. And I thought that was the great thing when I heard She-Hulk. I've been saying that I want Aisha Tyler to play She-Hulk for years, and then just have it be like you can have it be a connected story, obviously, but you can have just random episodes where it's like she's doing a court case for somebody, and that's eventually how we meet Matt Murdock as they end up coming on opposite sides of the case or something like that. Like one of the things I love speculating with these movies is that I always love thinking, okay, who do you think they're going to introduce in this new thing? Like one of the things I was excited about the Falcon and Winter Soldier is they're like, oh yeah, and they announced the U.S. agent was going to be in it. I was like, oh, wasn't looking, and definitely didn't think it was going to be the guy from that weird show on TBS. What is it, like Lodge 49? Like he doesn't look like a superhero to me, but I love that Marvel can do that. They can take somebody that you'd never think would be like heroic, like getting Kumail Nanjiani and he's in a superhero movie. It's like, great. I'm all on board with that kind of stuff. It's like, I didn't see Paul Rudd as a superhero and now he's my Ant-Man. Right. That's all there is to it. Yeah. Like, it's just like, that's why I can be kind of a Marvel fanboy, is because even though, not all their movies are great. Like I didn't love The Dark World. Like I said, I didn't love the first Thor movie, but even their misses, they're still entertaining movies and they're still good characters that are well casted, and so it's kind of like they've done no wrong so far. The only thing I wonder is if this moving some of the plot to the Disney Plus stories will take away from like the overall kind of popularity that these movies have right now, because maybe it will never be as crazy as it was with Endgame, where everybody was seeing it and it's the most popular movie of all time. But I do wonder if somebody goes and be like, oh, I love Doctor Strange, let me see Doctor Strange 2, and then there's all this stuff that's referencing WandaVision and they're like lost, like, well, oh wait, what's going on? Like, will this make it be like overload? Because I actually read a thing, because one of the things I'm excited about is the Disney Plus is going to release their shows weekly. And I was afraid we were going to get to a drop it all at once society to where you never can talk to somebody about a show because they haven't started yet, or they're only on episode 2 and you're on episode 6. And it's kind of like you just have to wait. You have to binge it and then listen to a podcast about it. And that's your outlet. And I like that they're releasing stuff once a week. And I think they said that they're going to have it at one point in the year where they're going to be releasing a Marvel thing like every other week of the year or every week of the year when it comes to their TV shows, their movies and everything. That it was like every other week they were going to have something dropping. And I was like, dang, that's really getting our attention, isn't it?
Well, especially with the way things are going, and it takes, for me, it takes an event movie to get me to the theater. The movies that I've seen in the last year have been comic book movies. Wonder Woman, Justice League, then all the Marvel stuff, Infinity War, and Star Wars movies. Like, these are the only movies that I'm going to throw down my money for, is if it needs to be big. It needs to be, visually, more than I want to see for the first time in my home, but I think for the most part, there's too much of this stuff for me to go to the movie theater every time they release an episode of WandaVision or The Mandalorian, and I think they know that for the most part, people want to, have this content in their home, and especially, I think this isn't necessarily my original thought. I think I'm taking this from Mark Bernardin over on Fat Man on Batman. Like, TV sizes in homes are becoming, massive, and your home theater experience is rivaling, what, the type of experience you get in a movie theater, and people don't want to leave their homes to go see this stuff. So it makes sense financially for Disney to say, we're gonna bring it to your home. So
yeah, I think that makes sense. And I've like, I am a big believer in going to the movie theater, just because it's one of those things that helps me disconnect. I am not a check my phone during the movie unless it sucks kind of guy. Like, I don't like to look and see what time it is. I like to just unplug, dive into a story. And even I have kind of, I'm getting a little bit older and have more responsibility. Sometimes it's like, hey, I can wait till that comedy comes out on HBO, or, it's stuff like that, where it's like, if it's a Marvel movie, I'm seeing it opening weekend. If it's a DC movie, first week, but
right.
It's like, I'm looking forward to the Joker movie. I'll go see that in theaters. But
yeah,
I didn't see Hobbs and Shaw. Like, I like to see the Fast and Furious movies as unintentional comedies and sit there and laugh at them, and then go home and listen to how did this get made, and laugh at all the stuff I noticed. And but this one came around, and I was just like, I can wait till it gets on video. I'm not that worried about it. Like, there's only so many dates a year you can set aside to go see a movie sometimes.
Yeah,
and then just when life's busy, I'm not going to kill myself and be tired at work tomorrow to go see The Rock and Jason Statham yell at each other. But I went and saw Endgame in theaters 3 times just to watch that portal scene one last time when everybody's running at each other, because I can't describe it to enough people of what it's like to finally see a comic book come to life on screen like that. I'm just like, oh, I wanted this ever since I was a little kid reading Wizards, and they'd have the who we'd cast in this movie if they could actually make comic book movies section. And it's like one of those things like, oh, they did it. They finally did it. It's amazing. It's like, we thought they did it in the airport. Nope, they did it here. This was it.
Definitely file that under one of the best cinematic moments, in this 23 film franchise. It's definitely, I think, the pinnacle for me. So
yeah. And see, I'll be honest with you, just from that scene alone, the way Endgame kind of came together, if they said that was it, we're making no more, I think I'd be okay with it. Now, I do still want to see more, but everything they gave in that moment, how the emotions, just how they get high. Like I think Sam said earlier, when Thor caught that, or when Captain America caught Thor's hammer, I was right there with you. I was screaming. Yeah, I didn't. It was just like an involuntary scream at the screen in the theater. And luckily, there were a bunch of people with me on that moment, so I didn't look like a lunatic. But yeah, it was just everything you ever wanted in that moment. It was there. And if they said, "All right, we're done," I'd have been like, you know what? Fine, I'm good. I got a nice little comic saga right here, and I'm good with it.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of how many times I actually yelled out in that initial screening, because it was I'm going to try and impress you guys. It was the same night as the NFL draft, which I watch with my friends every year at my dad's bar. And so we sat around drinking for the NFL draft, and then I went and watched Avengers Endgame and didn't pee me. So that's how excited I was. I know I yelled the 2 spots I remember specifically yelling out is that part and when he yells Avengers Assemble. And it was kind of fun. I was glad I had stuck it out and went to that late showing, because it was like I was with my people and other people were yelling out and going crazy about stuff. So it was just things would happen. Everybody would be like, yeah. I'd be like, okay, cool. I'm not the only one yelling out. This is great. This is fun.
Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, I think that's probably a pretty good place to wrap up. And I've certainly appreciated all you guys coming on and chatting all these movies that we get to look forward to, and some more than others. But let's go around. Any final thoughts on anything, and plug your stuff. Tell everyone where they can find you, social media. Plug your shows or whatever you want to hit, kind of as we leave here.
You may start.
Sure.
Well, looking forward to everything we've been talking about. I don't really think there's one thing among them that stands out as like the key thing that I'm looking forward to. I'm looking forward to all of it because, like you guys, I'm a geeky, nerdy guy. I love this stuff and always hope for the best, that it's going to be good. Like I said at the top of the show, you can check me out at Super Mega Crash Brothers Turbo on the Pencil and Paper Podcast Network, found on all your podcasting platforms. So just get out there, check it out, and also on youtube.com/Pencil Paper Productions.
Very cool. Santiago, how about you?
I'm usually Tuesdays we drop local trash. This week's episode's going to be late because I was out and about doing some work for the network this weekend. But Chivo drops every Friday. And like I said, you could just visit us at www.nopleasedon'tpodcast.com. All our social media links and podcast links and everything's there. So you can find everything I'm involved with all in one place and check us all out.
Cool. I'll have those, all those links will be in the show notes for this episode. So, Sam, why don't you close us out?
Yeah, I'm probably the only one here that doesn't have a regular podcast, but I've been guest hosting on the Incomparable TV podcast, where we've been doing a Daredevil rewind. The main host has been doing a thing called a slow binge, and he has not finished it yet. So I've already watched it all, and he is going episode by episode, kind of trying to enjoy it, especially considering there's only 2 episodes left. But if you want to go to theincomparable.com, you can check it out. If you want to follow me on social media, you can find me on Instagram at SamAdmans1, or you can find me on Twitter at Samuel J. Adams. So, yeah, I'm hoping to be doing more soon, but I don't have anything to announce yet.
Right on. I want to shout out to the Podmates group. It's a little group that we're all in, and that's where I reached out and was able to get all 3 of you guys as guests for this episode. So thank you for seeing the post there, and just shout out to all of our friends over there in the Podmates group. So hopefully I'll hear all your voices on guesting on other shows in that group. But I think that's where we're gonna end things. And you can find us on Twitter at Real Comic Heroes. On Facebook, we have a group, the Real Comic Heroes League of Citizens. You can join that Facebook group and just kind of continue conversations over there. But for now, we're going to wrap up, and our next episode will be our review of Back to the Future 2. So until then, stay safe out there, citizens.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. Find the show on Facebook and Twitter at Real Comic Heroes. All music and audio are the property of their respective creators.